Good evening. I hope everybody's been enjoying their week. I know it's been action packed with all the earnings going on, and everybody's going through all the earnings of all these different companies that are oh so popular and have big market caps. Um, typically I've been putting out some more videos, but hey, there's more stuff to cover. So, without further ado, I'm going to make this video is going to be about Planet 13. This is an MJ company that I'm invested in, and I wanted to do some follow up because there's some news going on, and I wanted to articulate some of these catalysts and what it means for the planet as part of my thesis going overall for this year and going forward from time to come. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, Planet actually has had some news released today. All right. And that news is Florida approved their Vatican acquisition. So if people don't, okay, so for those who don't know, all right, anytime there's some sort of legality or some legal sensitive thing that needs to happen, such as maybe marijuana legalization stuff happening within a state where it's not really legal, even in legal states, the government is always involved. Like the state governments, they're the ones who are approving stuff. They're the ones who are granting the licenses and the regulations and all that good stuff. So Planet, of course, if they want to do business in Florida where there's no recreational use yet, and even then, they still have to, even with medical stuff, even if it's medically legalized, they still have to go through the state of Florida for their license to be approved, so they're all within regulations, and the everything's regulated and the state's tracking. Anyway, Planet 13, they're positioning for the Florida market, and the Vatican acquisition, which is Vitacan is another company which they own a bunch of dispensaries throughout Florida and so forth. Okay, and they have some more intellectual properties, a different stuff that goes along with the business that's good for Planet. But anyway, Florida approved the acquisition, so that's one step. Okay, the next step. Let me see here before I get too far. All right. Yep. So the OMMU approvals for Planet 13 Florida sales to the SGWFL and Planet 13's acquisition of Vitacan are the final regulatory approvals required for the transaction. The company extended the end date of the Vitacan deal to May 31st, 2024, and expects to close the transaction by then. Okay, so Planet 13 got approval from Florida. And they got a license from Florida to sell and get this thing rolling. All right, and as you can see, Planet is planning on closing the deal by May 31st. Could there be a delay? Sure. Could it be a little faster than that? Sure. Nothing's perfect. So typically, what goes on with an acquisition is usually there's some sort of valuation portion done by some special accounting firm that does business valuations, and then the acquisition will go through legal reviews on both parties. I don't know if anybody's ever bought a house before, but there's a whole nother set that's kind of similar, but in a more corporate sense. But anyway, the lawyers got to look through all the mumbo jumbo. Everything's got to check out and check through, and both parties got to be happy with the deal for this thing to close. All right, and that's just what's going to be required for it. Now, recreational use is not legal yet in Florida, and this acquisition is going to position Planet for that, to be able to immediately have first movers advantage when it comes to legalization. When you have a corporate bigwig coming in, Planet is going to be the one to capture that. All right, and that's part of my bull thesis. So let's look at my position real quick before I go into my checklist of catalysts for Planet. Let me see here. Bear with me. So as you can see, I own 16,500 shares. I got a bunch of long shares from years ago, which cost basis was way up there, and I took a break, like I said in earlier videos. But as you can see, a lot of the amount of shares purchased with the larger cost basis is pretty much minuscule compared to the quantity. Like maybe 500-600 worth of shares are up there in higher cost basis, as averse to 16,000 shares were really purchased at lower valuations. Anyway, my overall cost basis is 62 cents a share. My share, I invested a little over 10 G's invested capital, and my stock is up. My stock's up 22%. I put out on my Patreon buy alerts and sell alerts all the time. So, my Patreon members saw when I was buying this thing. So if you're interested in my Patreon, link down below in description should be a little Patreon icon. Go ahead and check that out. All right. So enough with the plug. That's my position here. I got 16,500 shares. Let's see what the Planet did today based on this news. All right, Planet, and now the whole market was going down, if you recall, if you've been paying attention, but Planet has been going up, and there was a little bit of resistance coming up here. We hit 80 during the middle of the day, and a little bit of a kind of a formulation in the 60 to 65 range or what have you. But we're going to continue to go up and up. Like I said in my videos before, I wouldn't be surprised in a couple months this thing is double on my position at least. Stock probably going to double, or at least from where it was at 55 cents or what have you. Another thing that I wanted to point out that a lot of people don't know about, if you're invested in this industry, not just for Planet, but just in the industry in general, is there is a possibility that there's an upcoming bill coming up in Congress or what have you. And this is the FAA bill, which has to be passed by May 10th. And this is more for regulations on airline travel and all that good stuff. Now, there's leaders are considering sneaking or putting this I shouldn't say sneaking, but in all reality, they're trying to sneak. They'll probably sneak it in the bill. Marijuana, they're going to do safer marijuana banking and cryptocurrency, bill. They're going to put that in there. So safer banking for these companies, which much needed if you know the history of Planet 13. I'm definitely an advocate for this to happen. But it's a possibility. Now, I don't know, this safer banking, this thing has failed to really protect the companies. There was another version of it that semi-pseudo, it passed, but it semi-pseudos protects the companies, but not really. It protects them from federal entities, but it doesn't protect them from everything else. That's a long story, but that's something to consider. Now let's pull up my catalyst here, because I made a checklist. All right, thank God for me. All right, so here's my upcoming catalyst checklist for Planet. I just look at that beautiful intellectual property there. All right, so I made a checklist. HHS study to recommend to the DEA rescheduling. We got it. Checked off the block. That's one catalyst that happened. They did their study. They sent it to the DEA. All right. The Days Consumption Lounge opening. Lounge is opening. Company starting to revenue off it. From what I understand, it's very popular. People are going to it. And rightfully so. It's one of the first to open in the whole United States, from what I understand. All right. Florida regulation permits and sale of the Vitacan acquisition. It is approved. That's the article we just read. All right. That's the news that came out. All right. And that's why stock is up. All right. Or one of the reasons why. All right. Florida Supreme Court approval of recreational MJ use on voter ballot in November. So the Florida Supreme Court approved that a vote for recreational use for the state of Florida will be on the voter ballot in November. All right. Now keep in mind, people got to vote, and we'll see what they say. I'm of the belief that most people in the United States want federal legalization everywhere. All right. For the most part. All right. Maybe there's some rinky dink little counties where they want to remain, dry or, whatever. But for the most part, a general consensus, I'm, from the studies I've done, everybody wants legalization for the most part. All right. DEA is yet to respond to Schedule 3. All right. That's another catalyst coming up. If they approve and reschedule this thing, we get 280 tax removal. That means the business can, these businesses can start writing off all these expenses, on the cash flow statement, financial statement, and balance sheet, all that good stuff, just like all the other companies can. All right. With the 280E removal, we can be looking at eligibility to uplist to NASDAQ. Okay. Granted, the company meets the requirements for that actual indice. Not only does it has to be federally all legal, you have to actually meet the actual the requirements of the NASDAQ indice. So, I mean, NASDAQ's pretty loose as far as as far as allowing people to come on there, or allowing companies to come on there that are growth oriented, because that's what the whole idea is. And the actual closing of the acquisition on or about the end of May is a catalyst as well. Deal has to close. It takes two parties, right? We got the people that are being bought and so forth. Okay, so that deal needs to close. It needs to go through legal review. Everything's got to check out, and that's important. All right. The Florida recreational ballot in November itself is a catalyst, so that whole process needs to happen. It's going to be like the Super Bowl to me. I'm going to be very interested to see what the results are of that vote, and that needs to go in the right direction. You're noticing a lot of these things are subject to approval. They need to go in the right direction as far as the voters have to vote yes on the ballot for recreational use. The acquisition has to get through. All these things have to go in the right direction for this to work. All right. And I guess you can call this is why we call it speculation. Okay. I'm not going to lie. This is risky investing. All right. But nonetheless, if these go through, I don't need the planet to be positive adjusted EBITDA. All right. Just with the catalyst going through, we should be commanding a higher price to sales. All right. We'll look at that in a second. All right. Reaccelerated revenue growth. We're going to see that upon all of this. The opening of the consumption lounge, speeding up of revenues, so forth, all across all the open locations. All right. The potential of the Safer Banking Act in that FAA bill next month. All right. And this May 10th deadline, that can be pushed. These politicians, they're always pushing these deadlines to the right all the time. All right. It's the government. Nothing's fast. So I wouldn't be surprised if that bill gets punted over to June or July. All right. But, I'm not really banking on, no pun intended, I'm not banking on this Safer Banking Act to be one of the major catalysts, because I don't necessarily think it's going to pass through. All right. But I see this as more a bonus, if you will. If it goes through, it'll help. All right. So that's my catalyst. We'll go to Planet 13 on Seeking Alpha. We'll go to evaluations, and we're going to see where this thing is trading at. All right. So Planet, let me just do this real quick. On a price to sales metric, all right, on a forward price to sales, we're trading under 1. The sector median is 3.5 times. Okay, from a from a growth standpoint, we'll go to earnings estimates. We are set to grow. Analysts got us growing. Granted, it's one analyst, okay, so take it for what it's worth. All right, it's a small company. What do you expect? But analysts got us set to grow over 80%, slightly or about 80% this year in revenue. Okay, and that's the sales. So, I mean, if sector median is on a forward price to sales metric, if sector median is about 3.5 and 3.5 times sales, and we're trading at about price to sales, forward price to sales of under 1, all right. I mean, that's potential the stock can triple. Okay, all right. So I'm not going to be surprised if it does. I need those catalysts to go through though. The revenue reacceleration alone is going to be good, and their balance sheet as well. Is going to still have net cash. All right, so I'm feeling good about it. Once again, I'm not going to be surprised if a couple months the stock's going to be, $1. All right, we'll see. We'll see if the catalysts come in. If one of these catalysts just hit, that can propel the stock upward alone. And I think the valuation's already so cheap. All right. So that's what I got for Planet. I know it was a pretty long video, had a lot to cover. I appreciate y'all's patience. I hope y'all found value in this little late night video. And, I don't think there's a lot of people covering Planet, and, I'm one of the shareholders. So if you're interested in this industry, or interested in penny stocks, or just investing in the stock market in general, and you're finding value, consider subscribing to my channel. All right. I don't, the algorithms pretty much say there's not a lot of interest in this particular company or this stock, but that's okay. Value is value. All right. So consider subscribing, hit the thumbs up, comment down below. I want to see where do you all think end of year price target is? What is your end of year price target for Planet? Comment down below. You think this thing's going to be $2, $1.50, $3 by the end of 2024? What do you think? All right. So, but yeah, with that being said, thank you and enjoy the rest of your week and have a good night.